think it can be sometimes daunting to see some of the men like zoom past you in your career, and it's like, God, I missed out on my career stuff so much. Can I actually catch up? Like, you're not in a race with anybody. It's your own life. You chart your own journey, um, and your journey is yours to write, right?
Have you ever made yourself small at work just to fit in, or maybe edited who you are just to belong? I know many of us have done that. But then your hard work doesn't get noticed and the recognition goes to somebody else. Well, you are not alone. Welcome to another episode of No Woman Left Behind. I am Rosie Zilinskas, your host. And we're going to learn so much from today's guest, but a few things that I wanted to point out is that we're going to talk about the difference between what visibility does and what advocacy does. We're going to talk about mapping your career by skill set and not by title. And then if you are in a situation where you're deciding on a new role, there's a 3-part filter that you can apply. My guest today is Ashwini Balasubramanian. I hope I said that okay, Ashwini. And she is a leader driven by innovation and change. And so let me tell you a little bit about Ashwini. With a strong foundation in engineering and sharp business acumen, she has led global teams at Fortune 500 companies. She is a certified sustainability excellence associate, a sought-after ESG keynote speaker, and the author of Map Your Ascent, Embracing Change as Your Leadership Superpower. And of course, we are absolutely going to talk about the 3 Ps in her book. So trust me, you are not going to want to miss this conversation with Ashwini. Welcome, Ashwini. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. It's a little bit better and cooler than yesterday, but I'm starting to enjoy the summer, no doubt.
Good. Yes. I think
How are you?
everybody is welcoming the warm weather. I am doing well. I'm excited to talk to you. Obviously, we are here to talk about women in leadership and how women can continue to grow and advance in their careers. And so I know I just interviewed, well, not I just, but I recently interviewed Kim Ziamek. So you and I know Kim, and she is absolutely wonderful. I'm really excited to talk to you about your story and what you see in the workforce when it comes to women. So the very first thing that I want to know is, what pivotal point in your career did you finally think, you know what, I think I can do more?
Yeah. I think I talk about this quite a bit with my mentees and with also in my book that's coming out. I think a big inflection point for me in my journey was motherhood, right? Until that point, I was okay trying to fit in, trying to adjust, edit myself to fit the room. All of that was fine until I couldn't anymore, right? So once motherhood app happened, I think I realized people didn't understand my challenges truly, and I couldn't just keep editing myself because it wasn't an option. Like, for example, I was in a test engineer role at that point, and people didn't understand I couldn't go on the test track on the road while I was battling morning sickness. I don't know why we call it morning sickness. And so throughout the
Yeah.
but things like that, people didn't get it, right? I was the only female in the department, so it took a lot of courage to step back and say, I should talk about this openly, because I don't believe anyone's viciously trying to not understand your challenges. It just doesn't cross their mind. So I think that realization really was a game changer for me, because I felt like I was holding myself back. I was holding the source of my impact back because I was editing myself so much to fit the room. And once I stopped doing it, because I couldn't honestly anymore, I think my career actually took off. So I think that switch of being able to say, I don't have to be a culture fit, I can be a culture add, was a huge shift in my own mindset.
Wow. I love that culture ad. You're absolutely right, because so many women try to fit in, we are trying to fit the mold instead of us being our true selves and then showing up. And I love, like you said, it's like we are adding value. And how do we add value? And how do we not allow people to shut our own selves down? Because again, we're trying to fit the mold. So I think that is such a key understanding. Now, when you thought that, is that something like later on when you're like thinking about your book, that one moment, that's where I learned that? Your experience, how did your experience shape the book, I guess is the question that I'm asking.
So maybe it's helpful to understand. Writing the book was never part of my plan. I had no
Ah.
idea that I wanted to be an author or I could be one. I'm a person that when I see a challenge, like someone throws a challenge in front of me, I want to go after it. Like it's exciting for me. I thrive in those kinds of environments.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the book is all about as well. It's all about how to embrace change and not try to survive it, right? Really try to harness it instead of trying to survive it. That mindset shift can be game changing, right? So for me, I think even as a child, I encountered so much change. And then I started seeking out change through the next adult phase of my life. And I think as I sought out change, you don't have a choice but to think about how do you evolve constantly, right? Not leave behind the core values you have or change who you are fundamentally, but how do you evolve into a skilled person that you become such an asset that people want to go after, that people want on their teams, right? And you can't do that if you don't let yourself evolve. And in order to evolve, you need to go through change, right? So I think I forget who said this. I think it was Mark Twain. If the purpose of the captain was to preserve the ship, you can never leave the shore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in order to really move yourself through life and actually have so many different experiences and actually get to a meaningful place, you have to leave the shore. You have to leave your comfort zone in order to make your journey meaningful and truly unlock your potential and make the journey meaningful for the people around you too. You don't think of it that way, right?
Right. Yeah. It's so interesting that you say, sorry, about the shore, because there are so many movies, shows, and stuff like that, that one person is telling another person, I don't want you to get hurt. And I'm like, I hate that phrase because that is the dumbest thing that you can tell somebody. The person is gonna get hurt. It's life. They're gonna get hurt no matter what. You cannot keep people in a bubble. And especially with rom-coms, like relationships, you're going to get hurt. And the reason why I say that is because growth comes from that experience. So to your point though, like if you leave the ship there, how is it ever going to be useful to other people and make a difference? Same thing with us. Like when you are working in whatever organization you're working in, you are going to have rejection. You are going to have difficult conversations. You are going to have challenges. And it's through those challenges that you grow. So it's funny because every time I hear like, I don't want you to get hurt, I just roll my eyes. I was like, oh my God, like what, you cannot protect people. So it's just too funny. But okay, so tell us a little bit about what your role is, how you got to your role, and were there people that helped you get there?
Yeah. So currently I serve as Vice President of R&D at 3M for our transportation and energy business. It's a fascinating global role. 3M is a very interesting company, obviously has a lot of legacy, a lot of history, is one of the benchmarks in the world for innovation, right? So our innovation engine is super, super strong. So for me to be able to come into a company that embraces innovation, embraces change and challenge in such a open way has been super enchanting, I should say, right? So super excited about this role. I've been here about 5 months. Prior to that, I worked as the head of R&D at Harley Davidson and also led strategy and operations for our product development team at Harley. And prior to that, about 20 plus years in the automotive industry, right? So I would say, I think maybe there are three things that led me to where I am. One is not be afraid of dreaming big, right? Not be satisfied with status quo. You can always do more. You will always know less than where you need to go, but you can always do more and you can continue to learn. If you have that learning mindset, you can continue to dream big, right? If you just dream big and don't have the growth mindset, it doesn't really work out. So that's
Mhm.
the first thing, is to be able to dream big along with a growth mindset. Second piece, I think, and I talk about this quite a bit in my book, is if you want influence and if you want to build a reputation, you need to start with generosity, right? Which means you have to give to others. It doesn't matter. You don't have to wait till you're a VP. You don't have to wait till you're a director to give back to others. You
Yeah.
always have ways to give back and support other women that are around you. And I'll substantiate that in a minute. I think so. You have to start with generosity if you want to build your reputation and your influence. That, I think, has been another crucial point. And the third piece, I think, is saying yes even when you're unsure.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think, has also been super game changing for me. When I've either sought out roles or when roles have come my way, most of the time, 50% of the role, I don't have familiarity. I know that going into the role, but I
Yeah.
also know I have transferable skill sets, right? So I have to feel confident in the roots I'm bringing with me. But then I also have to have confidence that the environment I'm going in will water me enough if I open up and be vulnerable and admit what I don't know and seek to
Yeah.
understand and want to make an impact, right? Don't worry about impressing people, want to make an impact. So I think those three things have been maybe crucial for me to get to where I am. And I said I would substantiate that second point about generosity. So this was almost, I want to say 14 years ago now, when I had my second child and I was working at a company called ZF. I had my son prematurely. He was 2 months, 2.5 months early almost. And so I came back from maternity. I thought I'd done this before. This was at round two, right?
Yeah.
So you feel like, yeah, I should know how to do this. It shouldn't be that hard. But man, every experience is so different, right? So I felt exhausted. I was tired. I felt guilty leaving him in daycare. So it was just a lot of mixed emotions. And I sat down one day at work and I said, man, this cannot be just me. I'm not the first woman to have more than one child or even have
Mhm.
children, right? So there must be other women that are going through this. I need to talk to other women. I need to talk to them. So it started out from a very selfish point of view. So I went to HR and said, hey, can we have like a resource group, a women's resource group where we can, talk to each other, help each other out? And this was almost 14 years ago. There's no concept of DEI or anything like that
Right.
at that time, right? And HR said, hey, we don't have the bandwidth right now. Unfortunately, we can't help, right? We want to, but we just don't have the bandwidth. Maybe we revisit this in the next 6 weeks or so. And as we work together more, you'll know more about me. I usually don't take no for an answer. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how can we actually make this happen? So I went back to her and I said, hey, do you have a problem if I start something? I know you don't have bandwidth, but I feel like I can take this on. And she said, yeah. Knock yourself out. Just don't drop the ball on your day job. I'm like, okay, got it. So I went and found 15 women that worked in my building, brought them together, and just had a conversation around, hey, I'm struggling. Have you gone through this? Can you talk about how you overcame this? What I can tell you, Rosie, is I left that meeting after an hour and a half. And I was like, God, I don't have problems in my life. There are women that are dealing with, terminal illnesses.
Oh
There
my
are
God.
people that are dealing with caregiving issues. There are
Yeah.
people that are dealing with children with special needs. There's just a whole world of issues that, women deal with behind the curtain. And I walked away saying, this is not just a me problem anymore. This
Yeah.
is a bigger issue than just Ashwini's individual problem. So we made this women's resource group more formal. So word of mouth, we started spreading it. I put a strategy together. We went to the executive team, asked for sponsors, beg, borrow, steal, whatever we could do. And by the time I left the company, we had grown it to 600 members, 4 different chapters. And it
Wow.
was probably the best role I've ever had, like the most fulfilling role I've ever had. And like I said, I didn't start out to do anything big. It was just like, I want to help. I want to make things better for women, not just who are in the workforce now, but for women that are coming into the workforce as well. And I can tell you that that experience and that generosity probably built a lot of influence that I didn't know I was building at that time.
Yeah.
That brought a lot of people into my life because they knew who I was. And I always tell this to my mentees too, is people hire you not just for what you know. They hire you for who you are, right?
Yeah.
So the easiest way to build your reputation is through consistent behavior and generosity.
I love that story so much. That is literally the it exudes that generosity definition. And it's just so lovely to that realization of yours that you're like, man, I'm not the only one. I need to talk to people. And then, and I know we're going to talk about perspective, but it kind of puts things into perspective, right? Because you're like,
Right.
holy cow, I don't have any problems. So that's really cool. And it's so interesting too, because you never know what life is going to throw at you. You know, I left the corporate world in 2023, and I was like, all right, I'm going to like work on my, my business full time. And then my dad got sick. And then so I was pulled from that and into this like caregiving. You just never know where you're going to be. But I was fortunate enough that I no longer had to work, and I was there for my dad, till the end. And he just passed away in January. But life, thank you. Life is hard, and we need those people specifically. Like, I have three sisters, I have my three best friends, and I have all the people that I'm, building, relationships with. It's like, I don't know how men do it. Like, my husband doesn't talk about stuff with his friends and his brothers. Like, he goes out to a beer with his buddies, and I'm like, how's everybody? Like, I don't know, they're fine. Like, for me, just having a conversation may not solve my problem, but it's that I'm not in this alone feeling that really feels like you're being supported and listened to. So I just love your story. So thank you for all the work that you do. Now, I know you're in another organization. Kim Ziamek is in as well. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so Automotive Women's Alliance Foundation is a 30-year-old nonprofit organization that primarily our mission is to make sure that we can advance and empower women in automotive and related industries. That's our mission. So the way I got connected is I attended, I think, a couple of events about 6 or 7 years ago. And I got to meet the women that were part of this network, again, through the women's resource group that I founded in Zenith. So you never know how the dots are all getting connected, right? So that led to this, and I started attending their events, and I really was impressed with the kind of camaraderie the organization had. And I think it's a good example of how we can break the stereotype that women are catty, that women don't help each other, women don't lift each other up. And AWAF is quite the opposite of that, right? So when Kim asked me to join the organization, I just couldn't say no. It was one of the best decisions I made, I think, in my career, because organizations like this teach you how to lead without authority. They teach you how to lead with influence. And then when Kim asked me to be president in 2023, again, I just couldn't say no. Work was very busy at that time, but I knew how it can feel when you have a fulfilling role to play, right? From my experience from running the Women's Resource Group. So we've since then, I think we've dramatically increased our membership. We've dramatically increased our social media following. Our net income has gone up. Now, those are not the goals. Those are the byproducts of having a clear strategy of wanting to help women in every phase of their career. So as we were talking before, we do have scholarship programs where women can apply to scholarships, not just as a collegiate student, but also as a working career professional. Like, say, for example, you want to re-enter the workforce and you want to go back and get a certification or a master's degree. You can apply to the AWAF scholarship because we will help you financially to get through your certification or your master's degree. Because if you've taken a break, more than likely you're trying to find your footing, right? And that's not the only support we can provide. We can help you get a mentor in the industry you're targeting, right? So, for example, in this case, we also have a lot of different ways to connect you to industry influencers, because sometimes it's not just what you know and how competent you are, it's who you know and what they know you know, right? So it's a lot of convoluted steps, and it can feel overwhelming if you try to do it all by yourself. So having a tribe like AWAF can be super energizing and can make the journey less painful, I think.
Yeah, that is amazing. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about what you have observed. You're in the automotive industry, and there's so many different ways that women manage their careers differently than men. What have you noticed or observed that men do in their careers that women don't?
So I think there's one fundamental difference that we as women can't avoid. So I say this all the time, that your biological clock is in conflict with your career clock all the time. So if women want to wait for this magic window to grow their career, unfortunately, I don't think there is one.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're most fertile, you need to build the foundations of your career. And when your children need you the most, you're building the mid career part and the skill set, the business acumen, and all of that. And where your career starts to take off, menopause comes in and shit hits the fan, right? So
Yeah.
there is unfortunately not a great time window, unlike men, where men could be a little bit more selective of when and how they pace themselves. So what I tell women is don't be shy to lean on your village, right? Whether that's your friends, whether that's your partner, whether that's your family, there is no shame in leaning on others for support because fortunately, only women can actually procreate. Right? We are the only ones biologically that can reproduce. So, in some ways, the society has to be grateful to women because we are moving the generations forward. And that's something that I think if we understand, we won't feel guilty asking for help, right? It is a lot to be a mom, to be a caregiver, to be a wife, to do all of these hats. It can be overwhelming. So try to make the journey a little less overwhelming by asking for help. I always say this, asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of strength. You know what help you need, when you need, so you can actually go achieve your goals. And two, you're not in a race, right? Not everybody started at the same starting point. Not everybody has the same end goal. You're not in a race with anyone. So don't let your career dictate your life. Don't worry about it so much, right? Pace yourself, however comfortable it is. Because I think it can be sometimes daunting to see some of the men like zoom past you in your career and it's like, God, I missed out on my career stuff so much. Can I actually catch up? Like you're not in a race with anybody. It's your own life. You chart your own journey, and your journey is yours to write, right? So I think that's something I had to tell myself. Don't worry about it, right? Don't worry about that stuff. You will get to where you need to get to if you have the right attitude and the motivation. And the third piece of it is, I think, how do you make sure that you're paving the path for other women behind you, right? Don't forget that because I think if we all do that, the journey for other women that come behind us can be a lot easier. They don't have to go through the same things we did. I think that will be how we actually continue to retain and reward women, right? Through AWAF, we always say this enough to just recruit women into the industry. You need to be able to retain them and you need to be able to reward them. So if you have a position of influence, you need to think about all three aspects.
You know, that is so interesting. You're the first one that has really laid out how our biology, and I'm going to say this loosely, prevents us from sometimes accomplishing the things that we want to in our career, because you're absolutely right, right? We're the only ones that can procreate. But also you laid it out so beautifully, because when you're young and you're in that like building, you feel like that biological clock is ticking. And then when you're in the middle of it and you have teenagers, that's when they need you the most. And then menopause hits and you're like, oh my gosh. And by the way, there's this amazing Dr. Mary Claire Haver. She is the podcast host for Unpaused. And yesterday I was listening to one of their podcasts and they were like, you know, women, our entire lives, our hormones are changing. From the time that you hit puberty, then you get into the like those, you know, periods and baby years, and then you have the children and all of those hormones, you know, all the like the post baby depression, all that stuff. Then you're in perimenopause, and then you're menopause, and then you're in postmenopause. And so their point was that our hormones are constantly changing and men's hormones are stable. And I was like, holy cow, I had never thought about that. So it's so interesting that you're bringing this up, because you're right. We have all of the biology plus all of the mindset, like we're the care providers. We worry about, is everybody okay? All that stuff. So it is incredible that men actually get stuff done, you know, because we get all the stuff done plus all of these issues. So that was an incredible, incredible share.
But I think also that goes back to, we'll talk more about the 3P framework in a minute, but I do think that considering the amount of change the world sees now, whether it's in terms of, technology acceleration, deceleration, geopolitics, political tensions and whatnot, right? Supply chain challenges, all of those. If you think about the change inherently women go through and how we manage and harness and thrive through change, we don't sit around and say, oh, I can't do this because I am feeling this way. Some days, yeah, we need those mental days,
Right.
mental health. But I think women are inherently prepositioned to thrive through change because of everything else we handle. So this is actually, I think, one of the best times to be in a corporate role because I think we know how to do change. We know how to manage it. We know how to harness it. We know how to thrive through it. So I think it's going to be one of the best times for women to actually be in the workplace and drive change as leaders.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is all gold right there, Ashwini. So that's amazing. Okay. So let's talk about your book. We talked about it a little bit, but how did the book come about? And then, once you share that, I do want to get into the 3P framework.
Yeah, we sure can. Thanks for asking that. So, like I said, it wasn't on my plan, but like everything else, life throws at you. Sometimes when, a new door opens, at least out of curiosity, you got to stick your head out through that door, right? So, Society of Automotive Engineers had approached me summer last year to see if I would write a book on motorcycles because I was working at Harley Davidson at that time. And I was like, nope, I've been there only 4 years. I'm not an expert. I shouldn't be writing the book. And then they said, oh, wait a minute, maybe you can write about your story. Your journey sounds really, really interesting. Would you like to share that with the rest of the world? I'm like, I don't know how. So they taught me how to put a book proposal together and we did all of that. But unfortunately, SAE ended up shutting their publishing arm down. But the publishing lead person came to me and said, I think your book has a lot of potential, can help a lot of people considering the amount of change we're going through. Would you please talk to these publishers? I think they will be very interested. So I talked to a bunch of publishers, interviewed with them. They interviewed me, and I think I was interviewing them as well, and then found Greenleaf Publishing to be my best partner in crime. And we kicked off the contract in September of last year. So that's how the book came about. I usually, when we had the initial call, the publisher said, do you want to land keynotes, paid gigs? Do you want to build? And I'm like, I actually don't have any of those goals. I want the book to reach as many people as possible because I do think change can be scary. And considering the extent of change everybody is seeing since COVID started, it has been nonstop. I think I have a lot of framework and tools and tips to share with people. So you don't have to be feeling about change as something that's so daunting. It can be exciting. It can be something you can harness. You can become a change agent and you can actually drive meaningful impact if you're able to think about it that way. So that was really the purpose of writing the book so that I can share that with the rest of the world.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. And it's so interesting that a lot of people are like, yeah, I'll write a book someday. And you were like, wait, what? I'm not the person to write the book. So it's very cool that they approached you and they started planting that seed and now it's an actual book. So I'm interested in the 3P framework because one of the things that we do here on the podcast is I want our listeners to walk away with what can they implement in their life pretty much today. So let's talk about the 3Ps, the personality, perspective, and presence.
Yeah, thank you for asking that, Rosie. The reason the book is laid out the way it is, I think most of the time, especially if you are new to change, right, it can feel like something that you are unable to control. You can't control the narrative. You can't control that change is happening. You might be at the receiving end of change in your organization, and it can feel like, God, what am I supposed to do? It's happening. Deal with it, right? So then what happens is you get into a survival mode and you just try to survive, right? The way I've framed the book is in 3 sections. I always think when things feel very uncontrollable, you have to pause and actually look inward, right? Because the only way you can actually control what's going on is by looking inward. So that's why the book is broken into 3 P's. The first P is your personality. So I'm not talking about personality in like a Myers-Briggs kind of way. I'm talking about your wiring, your belief systems. How do you find belonging in new places? What are your belief systems? What are some of the belief systems that have served you well? But what are the belief systems that you need to disown right now and evolve into something else? So it's really understanding who you are, what your wiring is, what your value system is, so that you can understand your personality. And then as you understand your personality, how do you then start to seek out change, right? Like for me as a child, I moved around a lot in India, quite a bit. And at that time, change wasn't a choice, right? It just happened to me. I think that shaped my personality into being someone that looks forward to change, right? The first one was hard, but after that, it kind of got fun. I figured out how to like make new friends. If you see me in a brand new room, I won't be the one sitting and waiting for people to talk to me. I'm going desk to desk, talk to talk, right? Because I feel like the world is my tribe and I want to get to know as many people as possible.
Mm.
So that's become my personality. So that will be different for every person. So understand what your unique wiring is. How do you find belonging in new places and new environments and changes? And then the second piece, like I said, is you can then start to seek out change in smaller pivots, right? You do that, you start to expand your lens. You get different lenses to view the world through, and that starts to shape your perspective. Right. So as you take on different roles, as you work in different companies, as you meet new people, your perspectives continue to evolve. Allow them to evolve. Don't try to hang on to what you had, right? Allow your perspectives to evolve. And then once you have your evolved perspectives, you have your personality that you've understood, you can actually drive change. You can harness change. And that's where the presence piece comes up, right? And then people start to view you as a change agent because they know you're comfortable with it. They know how you can harness it. And I think that has made me who I am. And that has contributed to my ascent, I think. So that's why I've broken it down into those three sections so people can actually look inward and then start to look outward how to build their presence outward, right? So change, like I said, can feel very daunting, can feel very messy. So I think you pause, zoom in, and start inward.
Now, the presence piece, a lot of women that I talk to, and I'm a high performance career coach, and they feel that they are invisible, overlooked, they feel stuck. And one of the things that my question is, well, have you communicated how you're bringing impact to the leadership? And they're like, well, how do I do that? So have you had experience on how, obviously you're a vice president now, so when women are struggling on how they show their impact, how would you position that to the women in the organization?
So I think, at least for me, I used to be under the belief that you work hard, you meet or exceed all your goals, things will come your way. Right. That used to be my belief. And I had a rude awakening through one of a career discussion where I applied to a role. And I talk about this in detail in my book, where I wasn't even called for the candidate pool, not even considered. Right. So I went and talked to the hiring manager because I was like, what am I doing wrong? My performance reviews are great. I'm exceeding all of my goals. Why am I not even being considered for this pool? And he said, yeah, you're doing great, but you're in a very support services kind of function. I need you to go show me you can understand the business aspect of it and you can actually lead the decision making piece of it. You're in a very execution based role right now. And, if I had been 10 years younger, I would have said, man, that was really rude. But I think I had the maturity to sit back and say, that was actually really honest and raw, candid, good feedback. I can do something with it, right? So I then started to seek out change that would give me the pivots I needed to go achieve those skills. So I would say you need to map your career from a skill set standpoint, not necessarily from a title or role standpoint. You should go after altitude, right? Women deserve to go after altitude, but you can't just have ambition without credibility. It doesn't work. Right? So in order to build credibility, you have to build skill set. And the way you build skill set is go after roles where you can bring transferable skills, but yet stretch yourself enough to learn something new, and you become a different kind of asset by the time you're done with the assignment. So I think that's how I've approached my career, is like be very vocal about seeking roles that maybe people are like, you're interested in this role? Really? And I'm like, yep. And I would tell you 7 times out of 10, people have said, no, not a good idea, not a good role for you. I said, okay, but at least I made my aspiration vocal and known to people. And the eighth time, when somebody said yes, I jumped all in, right? So it might take a few knocks on the door before you're able to open the door for yourself. But you can't give up because no one else is really planning your career or should plan your career, right? So I think that's the big difference is where you have to really think about your presence from an impact standpoint. Like, how do you go in and make impact? I think women have this fear of, oh my God, if I say this, will that person think I'm stupid? I don't have the right skill set. I don't have the experience. There's always going to be somebody that knows more than you. There's always somebody that knows less than you, right? So you have to just own your place in the career spectrum and be bold enough to admit where you don't know, but also be able to ask leading questions, right? So I think those are kinds of the approaches that I have taken in order to be bold and say, I'm going to do it anyway because it's my career. I need to own it. Nobody has the baton to take it forward than me, right? And your best advocate that you will ever have is yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting with that story because when I was 40, I was, already a high performer and doing all the things, and I'm watching other people get promoted, and I'm like, well, what the heck is going on? And the same thing, I thought the same thing. I was like, well, why am I not being, asked to become a manager or something? And then when I finally went and I spoke to a senior executive, he was like, well, you never said anything. And I was like, how did I? And I was also in the camp of like, they're going to notice my hard work. And that's,
Yes.
I'm talking a lot these days about the articulation gap, that we cannot just assume that our hard work is going to speak for itself. We need to translate it with results. And then ultimately, how does that impact the goals of the organization? Because I was interviewing another podcast guest and she said, I was doing great. I thought I was going to do fantastic in my performance review. And then I got an average on my performance review. And when I went and I talked to the manager, I was like, what's going on? I'm doing all these things. And he said to her, you're doing all kinds of things, but most of them don't matter to me.
Yes. Yes.
So that's another component of, you might be doing a lot of really good things, but that if they are not aligned with the impact that the organization is looking for, then you're working for nothing. So, it's amazing. What I love about these kinds of conversations, Ashwini, is that we kind of bring in different pieces of knowledge and we share so that the listeners can be like, oh my gosh, that one sentence, whatever it is really applicable to my situation. And this is why I love having these kinds of conversations, because you get so much knowledge from people like you and I that we have been, I had been in the corporate world for over 30 years. So it's, and it's in line with your paying it forward or paying it to other people that are coming up behind me. So absolutely. Okay. So you obviously care about women that are coming in to the workforce. What would you say to a woman that's maybe 1 to 2 years into their career and they're trying to figure out, and the thing is, we come out of college into the workforce and we're just expected to know what to do, right? There isn't a class or people unless you have a mentor. So what would you say to that young woman that is trying to get into the automotive industry or is in the automotive industry and they're like, okay, well, now what do I do?
Yeah. So I don't think the lack of progress for women is because there's a lack of ambition. I don't think that's true. I think women have same or even more bigger ambitions than men do. I think what happens is, one, we often seem to mistake visibility for advocacy. So I will explain that in a minute. I had a mentee of mine that came to me and said, I have this awesome opportunity at a different company, but so many people know me here by name. Like, I walk into a conference room and these people all are like, hey, how are you? How's it going at the VP, SVP level? And I feel like I'm leaving all that behind. And I said, okay, you're mixing up two different things, right? So one, evaluate the opportunity standalone on its own and have your own opportunity filter. And I talk about this in the book. I share my opportunity filter in the book. Know what your non-negotiables are. For me, those are three. Does this role expand my skill set? Does this role provide a career advancement opportunity now or in the future? Does it preserve my work-life integration? Those are my three non-negotiables. You have to understand what your non-negotiables are, and you have to run the opportunity through that filter and make sure that you assess it independent of where you are today. Don't compare it to the role you have today. We always have this tendency of saying, I'm so comfortable, I have the flexibility, my manager understands, blah, 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 all of the stuff, right? But you actually have to evaluate the opportunity standalone. You can't compare it to where you are today. The second piece is you should not mistake people knowing you with people advocating for you, right? So if you think visibility equals advocacy, that's a huge mistake. That's what I told her, right? So have any of these SVPs or VPs that know you, do you know that, do you feel like they are helping you progress your career or move you along? And she's like, no, I have mentoring meetings, but they're mostly Captain Obvious kind of advice, right? And I said, there you go. So don't hold yourself back because you think have visibility. Visibility is good, but without advocacy tied to that visibility, it can be meaningless, right?
Mhm.
So I think those two aspects are probably crucial as women continue to chart their career. The third and final piece I will say is write down your goals for the next 5 years.
Mm.
Write it down. You might not achieve it. I have my goals for the next 5 years. I've been writing it for the last 23 years of my career. Have I achieved every milestone? God, no. They've been moving, right? Because life happens, things happen. You have to pace yourself, like I said before. But writing them down gives you motivation to go after them, right? It makes you look at them and say, okay, what skills do I need in order to achieve that next role? Am I really mapping my career in order to get to that next ascent? Right. So I think those three things, right? So have your own opportunity filter. Make sure you're not mixing visibility with advocacy and make sure that you write down your ambition and your goals and have a plan. If you're not able to meet it 100%, you will at least get 75% of the way there because I guarantee you've written it down.
That is awesome. I love that. Well, Ashwini, I cannot believe how quickly this conversation has gone. This has been absolutely wonderful. I think you have such a great perspective. And by the way, the name of your book is Map Your Ascent, Embracing Change as Your Leadership Superpower. Is it already out? Is it on Amazon? Tell us a little bit about where people can get the book.
Yeah, the pre-order links are already available on Amazon and on Barnes and Noble on their website. So both stores are carrying it, which feels so strange
Yeah.
to see your name on those websites, but it's awesome. So the pre-order links are available. It will be available in stores on September 1st, but you can make a pre-order today and it will get to you the first week of September. So that's where the book is at right now. And I hope a lot of your audience will take time to read it, feel inspired to map their own ascent, and actually reach out and connect with me too. I want to help other women map their own ascent as well.
Yeah, well, you are doing such great work, and just by you agreeing to come on here and talking about your journey and share all of your knowledge is just, invaluable. So thank you so much for taking the time, and I will absolutely be ordering your book because I need to
Thank you.
read and I want to, read about your story as well. Are you intending on putting it on Audible after once it
Yes,
Yes. And
yes,
are
yes.
you reading it?
I will be doing the narration myself.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that is going to be amazing. I love it when you listen to the author because they can tell their story the best. So I am so excited
Yes.
for that.
Yes.
Yay! Excellent. Well, Ashwini, thank you again for coming on here on the No Woman Left Behind. And if you want to connect with Ashwini, for those listeners out there, reach out to her on LinkedIn. All of the links will be in the show notes. So with that, thank you so much, Ashwini.
Thank you, Rosie. Appreciate you having me on the podcast.
I am always so excited and just lit up every time I have a really great conversation like the one that I just had with Ashwini. She shared so much invaluable wisdom, and I cannot thank you enough, Ashwini, for coming on and talking to us. Obviously, her book, The Three Ps of Personality, Perspective, and Presence, I mean, that is key. That is so spot on. But I also found that three other tips are so important. So the first one that I wanted to share is that The moment that you stop editing yourself to fit the room is when your impact shows up. And I've been talking a lot about impact, so that one really lands with me. The second point that I want to share with you or remind you is that visibility is not advocacy, right? People knowing your name is certainly not the same as them helping you move your career forward. So don't give up a job because people know you if they're not advocating for you. And then the third one was run every opportunity through your own filter. And Ashwini went through her 3-point filter of her non-negotiables. If you are, once again, looking for that opportunity and you don't know what to do. Well, with that, again, great conversation. I highly recommend you ordering Ashwini's book. And as we discussed, she is going to be reading her book, Map Your Ascent, and connect with her on LinkedIn. I will go ahead and put the links to her book and her LinkedIn on the show notes. And before we close, I want to leave you with a free gift. I have been talking to many women about their careers, and many women feel overlooked at work, even though they are creating real value. And what I teach my clients is this: you do not have a talent gap. You have an articulation gap. And the articulation gap is the distance between the impact you create and the impact leadership recognizes and rewards. And so to help you close that gap, I created a free impact clarity tool. And it will help you identify your impact and start talking about your work in measurable, defined ways so that leaders can better understand the value that you are bringing to the organization. You will find the link to the Impact Clarity tool in the show notes as well. With that, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.